We're going to talk about the NFL, but this time talking about the play. And we're talking about the Denver Broncos and Seattle Seahawks, a rematch of last year's Super Bowl. What was interesting enough is you had the Broncos down by a big lead, down 17-3, minutes to go in the fourth quarter. They came back to tie it at 20 apiece before losing to overtime. Now, guys, you lose. It's tough. But considering the way they lost in the Super Bowl to the Seattle Seahawks, is this at least a moral victory for the Broncos, knowing, hey, we competed with them, we stayed to the very end, we scored touchdowns at least on them, more than one, and we could actually come back from these large deficits? That's got to be something they could take out of it, right?
Well, I think one of the things for sure is with the talent of Peyton Manning and how he can engineer an offense within a minute. Obviously, just like the days of John Elway when he engineered a 1 minute against the Browns many years ago in the playoffs. That in itself is a moral victory, to know that maybe if they're only down 5 or 6, they've got a shot no matter how much is left in the game, because he's such a talented quarterback.
You know, what makes Peyton so good, and I think I've said this before on this show, that he's just not a great quarterback, but he's basically an offensive coach too on the field. And he's the OC for Denver. Who's kidding who? But I think more than anything for Denver, I don't like moral victories. I don't think moral victories means a whole lot. But in this case it does, for the simple fact of the way Seattle's defense has shut down Denver, especially in the Super Bowl, that Denver finally showed that, you know what, we can move the ball against these guys. Did they get the victory? No. But at the end result is they know, as good as Seattle's defense is, they can move the ball against them and can be effective.
And let's be honest, Denver's not looking to just face those teams in the AFC. They know their biggest task will be beating whoever they need to beat in the NFC, and that's at the Super Bowl. So Seattle might be that team, and again, I do agree, moral victories do count here. Now, speaking of moral victories, what do you think of Tino Sinceri's job with the Saskatchewan Roughriders? He got the win, didn't look the greatest at times, but you know what? It doesn't hurt to have a guy named Weston Dressler in your lineup, and the way he played, considering how flat the Riders were for most of that game, you got to be happy that they pulled out a victory. Is that something that the Riders can hang their hat on?
Ooh, well, next 6 games, it's not going to be easy. It starts Friday in Edmonton. Tino passed for 25 yards in the first half. 25 yards. Seriously? But Corey went in the dressing room. There wasn't much paint left on the walls after he was done, and they came out like a different team in the second half. Be it it's against Ottawa, be it against one of the worst teams in the league.
With all due respect, if you look at what those Eastern teams did against Western opponents that week, without the Riders, it would have been a clean sweep for the East teams.
But I think of all the East teams, Ottawa's by far, like everybody else is here, and then Ottawa's just below 0. Because Henry has nobody to throw to. Henry does not have a running back. Henry doesn't have anything.
Even though he had a pretty good outing.
Yeah, exactly. He had, from what he had and what he did against Saskatchewan, says our defense needs to bolting down the hatches a little bit more on the pass offense. So the next few games is going to be a true test of Tino.
Yeah. What do you think, Jason?
And Henry's no Peyton Manning either.
No.
He doesn't have the talent to keep it going on that. But you know, with the way they played, the pressure was on, I think, from the Eastern team standpoint, that they were going to have that sweep through the weekend. But you know, they held in there, and Saskatchewan, they put it together when they needed to as well. And with Dressler and you combine his talent with a little bit of the lack of the tackling right near the end, and I remember texting my son. He was at the game, and I asked him, like, where are the horseshoes? Are they coming out of their pants or anything like that?
Well, even Dressler's punt return, come on, that should have been a flag. The roughing the kicker, contact the kicker, whatever. We got away with one there. We've got away with a few. So the law of averages eventually is going to catch up with the Riders, and a few of the penalties that's going our way right now,
Good to be lucky, lucky to be good. That's how it should be, Bucky.
And a win is a win.
Yeah.
Well, you know, we're going to move back to the NFL now and talk about Steve Bisciotti, the owner of the Ravens, coming out in a press conference, 45 minutes, talking to the media, saying, hey, look, we had no idea about this tape. Ray Rice is kind of throwing mud at us, but look, if you look at all the people who are throwing mud at us, it's related to the Ray Rice camp. And in terms of what the NFL did, you honestly believe that, you know, he's sticking with his gun, saying, hey, the NFL is not necessarily entirely at fault here, but this is a concern, yes. But you know what? I don't think the blame should be on the owners or Goodell. What do you make of this press conference? What do you make of Bisciotti's comments?
Well, it's interesting with how even early on and how they came out with the details of Ray Rice and what he actually did to his fiancée at the time. He did admit that he hit her. I think at first they talked about it being a slap, and to what degree. Once the more details of the tape came out, then it was very clear of how hard he hit and what the degree of it was, and then the changing of the suspension and stuff. But they obviously, even though they don't condone those types of behaviors, the bottom line is he's a talented player, and they want to keep a window of opportunity open for him, which is unfortunate with that, but I guess the team does whatever they can to keep their star players going.
And forgiveness is a part of it, right? You make a mistake, it's one thing. To own us up for it, I think, was the other. I think the lying is what really got him in trouble.
Yeah,
And Ray Rice lying.
Yeah, and I manage a hockey team, and we hold our guys accountable, both on and off the ice. And I think that's more than anything. You hold your players accountable, and you hold your employees accountable. Whether you own a company, you manage a company, or you run a hockey team or a football team, you hold everybody accountable. And all you ask from all those people is to be honest. If you're honest with us, we'll support you. Ray wasn't honest. He didn't really explain it, and then when the video came out, it didn't look good for him. It didn't look good for Baltimore, too.
All right, guys, let's move on to at least a feel-good story, you would say. The Holy Rosary Raiders remain perfect, and not only that, but they've dominated when it comes to the Wheatland Football League and are looking to keep that pedal to the metal, so to speak. They took on the Lloyd Comp Barons, a team that's upstarts, a new head coach, have done very well, however, lost to Holy Rosary last week, 31-1. As bad as that score sounds, and we talk about moral victories for the Denver Broncos, was there at least some kind of moral victory for Lloyd Comp, even though they lost by 30 points?
Talking to people, I didn't see the game. Jason, you were there. But it sounded like it was a lot closer than the score indicated. And high school football is a fine line where one player that play, and it can turn a game around, and it did in that one. And hats off to Vince having his team ready. And I think for Lloyd Comp, they got a younger team, and they're going to learn from this, and that's all you can hope for.
Well, and coming into the game undefeated as well, in talking to Vince even a little bit this morning, he mentioned about the kids being nervous, and I think even both sides, I'm sure that the nerves were up on both ends, but sometimes it just comes down to plays at the right times, and there was turnovers where the Barons had a chance to get back into the game, and when it came time to execute, they just fell short a little bit, whether it was a missed pass or a missed field goal, and then the Raiders were able to pour it on later in the game to really to put it away. But for the most part, it's just making the plays at the right times and then building on that confidence from there.
And the good thing about it, the Raiders and Barons have had some good games. My boy played for the Raiders, and it's fun to go to Lloyd Comp and fun to go to Holy Rosary for their games. So even if you don't have a kid that's involved in it, you want to have a little bit of fun and show that passion and hear the crowd. Get out and watch them play, because it's a lot of fun to watch a little high school football.
All right, we're going to take another time out. When we return, we're going to have Lloydminster's favorite game, Over Under, is next.